Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. I know this video technically goes up on Black Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, but I still wanted to wish you guys a happy Thanksgiving. Hope you had as much turkey and stuff as you wanted. And now we're going to talk about a movie that's kind of related to Thanksgiving. They celebrate Thanksgiving in it. Rocky. Now, Rocky is a landmark film not only in the career of Sylvester Stallone, but also in the sports movie genre as a whole. There's sports movies that came out before Rocky, and there are ones that came out after Rocky. And Rocky really is the one to cement the formula in really the best way I think it's ever been captured. It's really hard to think of a movie that better cements the tropes and formula of a sports movie than Rocky. Rocky is a pretty basic story about a down-on-his-luck boxer who's played by Sylvester Stallone, who also wrote this movie. I think people forget that Stallone is actually a pretty decent writer, because they think of Sylvester Stallone as this big, muscle-bound 80s action star. And in this movie especially, he really gets to flex some of his writing chops and his more artistic side. This is definitely more of a 70s movie than the 80s powerhouse blockbuster franchise that it became later down the line. This first Rocky movie is actually pretty grounded. It's a personal story. Rocky's fighting in church basements at the beginning of this movie for not a lot of money, to at the end of the movie he's going toe-to-toe with the all-time heavyweight champion. And yeah, if you feel like you've heard this story before, you've definitely heard this story before. And while Rocky as a movie isn't doing anything all that new, the intrigue in this movie is whether or not Rocky actually has a shot at winning, and that is a legitimate question. Rocky is not this indestructible superhero or legend that he becomes later down the line in the franchise as he gains more fame and more victories in the ring. Here he's kind of an underdog. He doesn't have the best technique. He doesn't have a lot of finesse. He's a brawler. You see that very early on with that opening fight. And that opening fight in the church basement is probably one of the best scenes in this movie, just for a character introduction alone. Because you learn everything you need to know about Rocky right out of the gate. You know that he is a talented boxer, that he doesn't have the cleanest technique, he's a bit of a brute, but he's respectable. He'll keep it friendly until you cross the line. And when the other guy does an illegal move, he headbutts him right in the forehead. Well, that's when he snaps and he's like, okay, I tried to be nice. Now it's time for you to go down. And he just lays into this dude, just relentless. And of course he wins. And that does a great job at establishing Rocky as someone who has a moral code. But if you cross that line, the gloves are coming off. It's going to get real. And the other aspect of this movie that was refreshing when I looked back on this original Rocky movie is how grounded and realistically all the side characters play their parts. No one's really winking at the camera. No one's, playing anything up to an unrealistic degree. But everyone's just sitting right in the pocket, especially Paulie, who is Rocky's friend and also is the brother of Adrian, who's Rocky's girlfriend. So Paulie is this kind of character that he doesn't really matter that much to the plot, but he's the moral support. He's the one that Rocky goes to when he needs someone to talk to. And what's great is that Paulie just has nothing good to say ever. I feel like in a lesser movie, he would be that confidant. He'd be a good friend. He'd be real supportive of Rocky. But Paulie, you never really know. It always leaves you guessing. You're like, all right, is this going to be kind of affectionate, more honest Paulie, or is this going to be defensive, alcoholic, Napoleon complex Paulie? That just kind of makes everything worse. He's a very complex character, and I really appreciate that this movie does show both sides to Paulie. He's just likable enough where you're not sick of looking at him, but he's really not a good person. He has really deep flaws, and a lot of times those flaws do get the better of him. So I really like how that was addressed, and that he wasn't just relegated to the supportive sidekick or the comic relief, which he kind of plays more in the later movies. But likewise, Talia Shire, who plays Adrian, she gives a great performance here. She's very meek and soft-spoken and kind of introverted. She doesn't really show much affection to Rocky at first, but then you realize that these are all barriers that she's built up her whole life, and that meek exterior is a defense mechanism because she doesn't have very high self-esteem. But Rocky sees something in her that he likes, and as they go on dates and as they talk and flirt and Honestly, Rocky does most of the talking on their dates, which is just hilarious, and it's kind of adorable. I don't really know how Sylvester Stallone was able to write this dialogue and write these scenes that have such a cozy feeling about them that just make you want to live with these characters just a little bit longer, which isn't really what I would expect from a Sylvester Stallone script. I would expect something much more action-packed, much more testosterone-filled, but no, this movie has a bit slower pace and a lot more time developing these characters, developing these relationships, and actually making you care about them. It kind of creeps up on you how invested you actually end up getting with Rocky and Adrian's relationship. It's not something I expected to care this much about when I popped in the movie. I thought, no, the relationship's going to be fine and she's going to be the support that Rocky needs and be the last act kind of push to motivate him to beat Apollo Creed. But that's not really how she's used. Sure, she's used that way in some other Rocky movies, but here it's more three-dimensional. She's her own person. She, of course, wants Rocky to do well, and she does kind of help motivate him in certain scenes, but it's more that Rocky's been given this gift, this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to fight Apollo Creed, to prove to the world that he's not just some bum, that he actually has talent, that he has heart. So he's training harder than he's probably ever trained before for that, while at the same time developing this relationship where it's no longer to the world that he's trying to prove he's not a bum, but really to prove to Adrian that he can achieve something that he puts his mind to and dedication in to, build up their future together. But of course, for this movie to succeed, it needs an equally compelling antagonist, and that is Apollo Creed. Carl Weathers plays him in this, and he is phenomenal as well. He's not as much of a goofball and show-off that he becomes in the later movies. Here, he's a bit more grounded. He still has a bit of a flair for the dramatic, that is for sure. He comes in the ring dressed as Uncle Sam and all that. But that's really as far as it goes with his showmanship in this movie. Most of the movie actually does a pretty good job at building up to that admittedly kind of silly and over the top moment, but the movie does a really good job building up to that moment where it doesn't feel out of place and it doesn't feel silly or goofy or over the top, because throughout the whole movie, the whole idea of this fight is a publicity stunt. It's Apollo Creed trying to stay relevant, find new people to fight. Now with this bicentennial anniversary of America, he wants to put on a big show and he needs a big name, but all the big names are busy or uninterested. So in a moment of creative genius, really, he's like, all right, well, what if we get a no-name, some lucky local Philadelphia boy to compete on the bicentennial of America? It would be this big thing. And it's kind of brilliant from a promotion standpoint, but what Apollo didn't really reckon on is that this local boy that they chose is Rocky Balboa for no other reason than because he has the Italian Stallion nickname, and that would look really good on the marquee next to Apollo Creed. But the thing is, Rocky Balboa does not see this as just fun and games, that they're just going to dance around, give people a good show. No, Rocky's taking this deadly serious, and he's training, and he's like, if I'm going to go step into the ring with the greatest of all time, I need to feasibly be able to beat him. I need to be that good. So he trains hard. He works with Mickey, played by Burgess Meredith, who is another great character in this movie. But what I think truly makes Rocky a classic film, the reason why it was a smash hit when it came out, the reason why it's a cultural touchstone today, it's a beloved classic, is because of the ambiguity of what it means to win or lose. Now I'm just going to spoil the ending. Rocky, when he fights Apollo Creed, he does not win technically. The fight lasts a full 15 rounds. It comes to a judge's decision. It's a split decision, and the decision goes to Apollo Creed. Because, when you watch the fight, Apollo Creed definitely has better technique. As far as points are concerned, he's really racking up those points, especially in the earlier rounds when his technique is just super clean. Rocky, on the other hand, doesn't throw as many punches, but when he does see those opportunities, he will go in and he'll do some serious damage. But clearly, because of the difference in style, everyone could guess that if it came down to a judge's decision, it would probably go to Apollo Creed, and it does. Apollo Creed is still the heavyweight champion of the world, but the movie doesn't really paint it as a defeat for Rocky, even though it is a defeat for Rocky. He didn't win the title that he was really trying hard to get, that we spend most of the movie rooting for him to achieve, but he loses, and that goes against all classic Hollywood convention. But I think what Stallone was getting at with this movie, and it's such a brilliant move, and you can definitely see its influence in other sports movies down the line, is that it didn't really matter if he won or lost. The thing that actually matters is that he got in the ring and he went the distance. He did not get knocked out in the third round like he did to the spider in the first scene in the movie. He did not go down like a chump. He lasted the entire round. He gave Apollo Creed a run for his money, and that came down to a split decision, which means the judges weren't even unanimous on who won the fight. That's a victory for Rocky. And that's why at the end, when the fight's over, everyone rushes the ring because everyone's so proud of Rocky. Even though he didn't win, that's not really what it matters. What matters is that he showed heart. He won people over just from his determination, his perseverance, and the fact that he did not give up. I just can't give enough credit to Sylvester Stallone. He wrote this out, he starred in it, and he gives what has to be his most nuanced and subtle performance that he's ever given. He is so believable as Rocky Balboa in this movie. It's so good. Although there is another person involved in this movie that I've neglected to mention, and that is the actual director of this movie. Contrary to what you might think, Sylvester Stallone, while he did direct the later Rocky movies, he did not direct the early Rocky movies, and this first movie was directed by John G. Avildsen. I feel like he's a director that kind of gets lost in the shuffle, and he's made some really cool movies. He directed Rocky, of course, and its sequel, Rocky 2, which is one of those sequels that I think is actually better than the first one, but he also went on to direct the original Karate Kid, which is one of my all-time favorite movies, and when you watch these two movies back to back, both Rocky and the original Karate Kid, you can definitely see him taking what he learned from the Rocky franchise and putting that into the Karate Kid. And I think that is a big reason why the original Karate Kid has held up as well as it has, because it has John G. Avildsen behind the camera. He knows how to shoot combat sports, make it look believable, make it look gripping. And a big part of that is just sitting on the master shot. The way he shoots these boxing scenes, he'll just have them go at it, and there'll be long takes of just chilling in the master shot, and so you can see all the combinations. You can see the impacts, although in this movie in particular you do see a few times where it's very obvious that they don't impact. And while that is a little corny, a little cheesy looking back on it now, that approach of shooting it where you just have these long takes of action, you see them going back to back, blow for blow, I appreciate it because it makes you feel like you are a spectator in the stadium watching this go down live. He's not using a lot of fancy camera tricks or editing techniques to speed up or slow down time. He's just letting the fight play out in a fairly realistic and brutal way. But his proficiency behind the camera is not just limited to when the boxing scenes are going down. There's quite a few interesting camera angles, camera moves. There's a really nice shot early on in the movie when Rocky's looking at himself in the mirror and he's looking at the younger pictures of him, and there's this real subtle move in. It almost feels like a Spielberg move, or going back even further, something Michael Curtiz would have done. And I do see John G. Avildsen's style kind of mirror those guys, which is probably why I love his directing so much. It's so effective, and he's so knowledgeable about where to put the camera, what to focus on in any given shot of any given scene. But he does it in a way that's subtle and that doesn't draw attention to the filmmaker. You look at M. Night Shyamalan or Quentin Tarantino, they both have very distinct directing styles, the way they shoot their subjects. But there is something about their movies where you're constantly reminded that, oh yeah, this is a Tarantino movie. Tarantino picked that shot because he likes those kinds of shots. Whereas where you watch a Avildsen or Spielberg or Curtiz movie, you don't really think so much about the director. You're just thinking about the characters, and the camera moves and shot compositions draw you more into the world of the story, and you're not really thinking about the director. That's something you think about after watching the scene 2 or 3 or 100 times, and when you're starting to pick up on these subtle details that you missed the first few times. And that's pretty much all I have to say about Rocky. It's a pretty straightforward sports movie. The underdog needs to prove himself. He's got to train. He's got interpersonal struggles and relationship drama that he needs to overcome in the meantime. And it's all building up to this big showdown, and then the match is over and our guy Rocky is on top, even though in this movie, again, technically doesn't win, which is a great subversion of that trope. But in the eyes of the people, he's still on top. And I love this movie. And yes, it is definitely what I would call a Thanksgiving movie, because there is a big part of this movie that focuses on Thanksgiving. It's the day that Rocky takes Adrian out on their first date, and that really kickstarts the whole romance subplot. So yeah, I'd say it's a Thanksgiving movie. But I turn over to you guys. What do you think about Rocky? Is it a movie do you love? Do you like the Creed movies better? Those are also pretty solid. I talked about the first Creed on the channel already, but whatever you think, let me know in the comments. And if you like this video, be sure to give it a like and subscribe for more content, and hit the notification bell to be notified every time I upload a video, and hit that join button to be a member so you get early access to my videos, as well as some other member exclusive perks. So be sure to do that, and as always, I'm Colby. This is my Nerdy Talk, and I'll see you in the next video.